In this video we are going to see how to create the whole section dynamically. As you can see, when I click on the add button, the same section is getting appended at the container or at the bottom. You can see not only it is getting appended, you can drag this section and rearrange its position. You can see I'm dragging the first one and I'm going to place it at the bottom. You can change the direction from any, you can change the position from any direction. Get the source code in the description. Now we are going to see how to create this using HTML, CSS and JavaScript. Fine, I have made steps to follow, and this is the link. You'll get it in the description, and these are the steps that we are going to follow in this tutorial. The first section is append the section. This is how we when I click on add, this section is getting appended. Now create closable section. If you click on close button, the whole section is getting deleted. Now the third is the draggable position. I have already shown you how the drag works. You can change its position from top to bottom or bottom to top or in between, in any direction. You can see I'm just dragging it and the position is getting changed. Now as I said, this is the zip version. You will get one HTML file, one JavaScript folder, one CSS folder, and each folder will have one file each. So the first is append the section. The first, I'm going to explain it. I'm going to explain the HTML. Fine, you can see we have two rows. The first row has button and the second row has the input field. Fine, the row, this is a row with buttons. We have save button and we have add button, and make sure I have used the ID for the add. So this is the ID for the button add. Now we have a container, and this container also has an ID. Inside this container, whatever we are getting, when I click on add, all the section is getting appended inside this container. So this is the first section. It has class, it has two class and an attribute. This draggable true is really important. If you don't specify it, you won't be able to drag. You can see nothing is getting dragged. I'm trying to drag it and the letter is just getting selected. Now if you see, I'm making the draggable true, so it is allowing me to select. Make sure to add individual contact and draggable class to identify each of them. Now run all the code only when the window loads. So we are going to add listener to the window. So when the window loads, your script should run. So for that, get the window and add the listener, which is load, and once it loads, it is going to execute this function, the second parameter of add event listener. It will alert you a message called content loaded and JS working. Now if you refresh it, once the window loaded, your script is getting executed, and that's fine. Now the second thing what we are going to do is we will look into the step and follow it step by step. Now add listener on button. To add listener on the button, we need to get the ID of the button. We have already taken the ID and pasted it on the notepad. To call the button, we can call it by get element by ID, and I'm going to store it into a same variable which is of ID. I'm going to add listener to it. Once I click on it, it should say a message called you clicked on button. So if you refresh, if I click on add button, it says add you clicked on a button. So the message is, so the listener is working fine. Now dynamically create a div with class and attribute. To create div dynamically, we are going to use a command called document.createElement, and inside we are going to give a div. So we are going to create div. So the second thing is I'm going to add an attribute which I have already shown you, which is draggable true. The first argument is draggable and the second argument is the value of the attribute, which is true, and we are going to add two classes to it. So this is a div which I'm going to create dynamically when I click it. So let me paste it so that you can see clearly what are we creating. So we have created div We have added the attribute draggable true. Now it's time to add class. Dot class list dot add. The first class is the individual contacts. The second class is the draggable. The individual contacts is just for the CSS, but the draggable class is needed for dragging, which will uniquely identify each element which is ready for dragging. Now I'm going to use a text inside the div which is hello, and I'm going to append this div into the container. I have already taken the ID from it, so let's copy and paste the same code. Just replace the ID and a variable name to store the element. Now let's append the div to the container. If you see, if you click on add, the HTML, inner HTML, which is hello, a simple text is added. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to convert this whole section. I'm going to paste. This is the first line is dynamically created, but the second line, from second line onwards, I want all the code to be inside the div. So for that, in place of hello, I'm going to paste this. If you use single quotes, it won't work. The backtick will only work here. Make sure Google what is backtick and you'll get to know. Single quotes or double quotes won't work in HTML. You have to paste backtick. Fine. Now you can see now the remove button is missing. Let's add the remove button. Now we are in the second section, which is create closable section. The first is we are going to create a button which is by using span. I'm going to add class to the span which I have already created, and I use position absolute to position it extreme right top. So this is a class. It has position absolute and some background and color, font weight, cursor. Fine. Now if you refresh it, you will see the button, the cross button. It is not functional right now because we have not added any function. Once I click on it, since there are more than one function, sorry, more than one button, I'm going to run a for each loop. So let's get the class with the help of document.query selector all. Why all is because we have more than one class. That's the reason why I'm using query selector all. Let's add listener. Once I click on it, so before that, let me show you how many classes of closable button is there. You can see there are 2 right now. If I click again, there are 3 right now. To access one by one, I'm going to use for each loop. Run for each loop for every closable button. So for each, and the parameter we will be getting one by one button can be accessed using the for each. That's the reason why I have specified one by one, or I'm going to pass one by one as a argument to the nameless function, and I'm going to add listener to it, add listener to closable button. So it will be click. Once I click on it, the function in the second argument should get executed, and what I need is I want the current button. So console.this will give you the current button which I have clicked right now. So if you click on close button, it says this is the button you have clicked. Fine. Now we need the container, we need the parent of it. The span is the last child, so we need the parent here is simply the draggable class. So to show you, dot parent element will give you the parent of it. Once I click on the X button, it will call the parent element. Previously it was showing span, now you can see it is showing the parent element. Now we want to remove the whole parent element, so I'm going to use the function remove. So you can see we have 2 cross buttons, individually can be selected. I'm going to use the remove, so the whole parent will get removed. If you click on X, the X button or the span will remove its parent. We have completed the closable section. Now we are going to make the dynamically created section draggable. So let's comment it so that in future we won't mess around in this code. Now this code is not at all we are going to use. Now let's work on the drag operation. As I have already showed you, each section has a class drag. Each section has a class draggable. Let me show you. This is the first section which has class draggable and individual contact. Let's ignore the individual contact, it's for style, but draggable class is needed. Since we have more than one draggable class, I'm going to use document.querySelector_all. It will give you the collection of node list. Don't worry about node list, it's a collection of tags. So let me show you how the node lists look like by sending it to the console. Just the draggable variable name. Fine. If you see the console, we are already in console. Let's click the console. You can see the node list has two draggable. Now it has three draggable section. You can see 1, 2, 0, 1 and 2 starting from 0. Now run the forEach loop for all draggable forEach, and we can access one by one draggable element which we are going to pass as a argument. Send one by one. Now add listener dragstart on all draggable element. Now we are going to add listener. Previously we were adding click. Now it's the drag start. So this function, once the drag started, it is going to give you a message called drag has been started. The same way we are going to add another event which is drag end. Previously we have used click. Now it's time for drag start and drag end. So let me give the message as drag end. If I try to drag, it says drag start and drag ended. Now if I try to drag and I hold it, you can see it says drag started. If I leave it, it says drag ended. Now in place of message, now I'm going to add a class. So you need to identify that I have selected a draggable element, so it will just have the style of opacity 0.3. Now replace the message and I'm going to add the class to it. Class list.add dragging. It is just a CSS style which will give the opacity of 0.3, that is transparent. And on drag end I'm going to remove the class. On drag start it is going to add, and drag end it is going to remove. Make sure you are clearly understanding it. This, with the help of the drag start and drag end, with the help of the dragging class we are going to move forward. So when I start on dragging, it is drag started. When I leave, it is going to remove the dragging class. Fine. Now we are going to use the dragover function. This dragover function will work only on the container. We have a container which we have already used it on the header section of the JavaScript. I'm going to add the listener. Here the listener would be dragover. Unlike drag start and drag end, dragover will run one, or drag over will keep on running once we are over the container. If you see I'm inside the container, you can see the function is running more than 270 times just by dragging it over the container. It will work only on the container, it will not work outside the container. That's what I meant to say or meant to share on the console section. Now temporarily add the dragging element with class dragging to container. I'm just going to append. To get the dragging element, I have already said to know that I am dragging a particular element, so that for that I have added a class called dragging. So this dragging is going to get appended to the bottom of the container. Choose a container along with append child. Now just append it to the container. If you have three elements, it will not allow you to place the element between 1 and 3. If you select it, it will directly throw it to the bottom because we are just using the append child. Here in this case we are not going to use append child, we will be using insert before. So for that, you can see, if you see, if I drag, there is a stop button, so it is not allowing us to drop. So to prevent that, e.prevent default will do the work. Previously it was showing the stop symbol on the cursor. Now if you see, it will show you the square symbol, or you can see it's a rectangle over there on the cursor. That means it is allowing you to drop. Now allow dropping. Now get the mouse position only on container using e.clientY. To get the mouse position on the container, we have a property called e.clientY. We have passed e to the argument. We have passed e as an argument for the function dragover. It is not working outside the container, but it is working inside the container. Fine. Now pass this position to get the element to insert before. Now pass the position to a function called first element to append, and definitely it is going to return an element and store it as a name element to insert before. Now let's initialize the function. Even though we initialize it outside the function, it is going to give the same result. Let's replace it with y, simply y. Now if I console and log the y, it is going to show you the position each time you drag over the container. You can see if I go outside, it is not going to run, but if you are inside the container, it is going to run. Fine. Now get all elements except the current dragging element. We are going to get the all elements which has a class draggable, but except the one which we are choosing by dragging. So for that, draggable not, we don't need the dragging class. That means the element which we are currently dragging. Let me store it into a variable. It is a node list because inside the container there could be more than one draggable element. Fine. Now let me show you console and log. If you have two, that means if you are dragging one, that means only one would be present. If you open, you can see the length is one, only one is there. Fine. That means it is getting except the dragging class. Now convert the node. It is giving you the node. Let me show you how does node looks like. And I'm going to convert the node list to array. If you try to drag, you can see it's a node list of 3. To convert it into array, you are going to use a spread operator. This is how the spread operator looks like. You're going to convert the node list to array. Previously it was written node list, you can see. Now it would be array. It would be inside the box. You can see there is a box symbol which is by square bracket. Now we are going to run forEach on each draggable element. Run forEach. Why are we going to run forEach? We are going to run forEach because we need the position of all draggable elements. To get position of all draggable elements, we would be using a function called get bounding client rect. Let me show you how does it looks. Use get the dimension info of the draggable box using get bounding client rect. So if you start to drag, it will give you each draggable element dimension information, in the sense it is going to give the top position, bottom position, left position, right position from the container, and along the x and y axis from the container, and along with the height and width of the container, not the container but the draggable element. Let me add something. If I try to drag, you can see it is going to give you top, bottom, left, right, x and y axis along with the width and height of the particular draggable element. Now remove the forEach element. I was using forEach just to show you that we can get the dimension of the draggable element. Now we are going to, since it's an array, we are going to use the reduce function. The reduce function will accept two argument. The first is the function initialization, and the second is this function initialization will accept again two argument, which is, you can give any name. Now I am giving close it. The close it, I would be defining it as a second parameter for the reduce. So I'm going to make it as an object which is offset. It's a number of negative infinity. Now perform condition. If negative values, then return the element. Let me show you with the console. it says when there is a negative element, we want the element to get appended. So how are we going to get the negative element? You can see mouse position and a box distance from top of the container minus the box height. You can see there's another. Let me check what it is. It's a variable error. Let me replace the variable. Fine. Now if I go above, it is negative value. If I go below, it is positive value. We just need the negative value. The it will not visible on the three boxes. Let me show you with the two boxes so you can clearly understand. If I go above, it is negative. If I go below, it is positive. You can see now the positive value is positive. Every value is positive. If I go above, it is say negative. Now if the value is negative, just return the value. I'm going to store this calculation to a variable called offset. If the offset value is less than 0 and if the offset value is in between number dot negative infinity, which you can access by closest dot offset, which is number dot negative infinity, then return the object. The object will have two property. The first one is offset. Let's define the offset as offset only. And now the element would be the child, which we are currently dragging it. Else return the offset, sorry, close it. Now we want the element to get returned once the function is run. Only the element, you can see, get the returned element. We need only the element. Since we are returning offset and element, we need only the element. So dot element, it will give you the reduce will give you the only the element value, and let's store it is going to get stored on the element to insert before. Now use the container and use the function insert before. We're going to insert our element just before the dragging element. If you run, it is going to work. To a uniquely added file, let me make 1, 2 and 3. So let's change the position from third to second. It is working. From first to second, it is also working. From third to second, yeah, it's working. You can change position in any direction as you want. Thank you so much for listening. Get the source code in the description.